is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 151. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, and at Night Sports Now. Keep leaving us those 5-star reviews. They're coming in. Keep asking us some questions. We've got some to read each and every week, and that's how we'll start out the podcast. Today we will be talking realignment. Colorado is now in the Big 12. Well, not now, but they have been admitted to the Big 12. We'll be back in the Big 12 next year, and some more realignment stuff. And then we'll talk about our preseason awards, looking at offensive MVP, defensive MVP, and then some breakout transfers, breakout freshmen. But first of all, Christian, how are you?
I'm doing great. I think it's great that since we last did our podcast that the Big 12 has doubled the number of black and gold teams in the conference. I think that's upward trajectory. I also love that Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel, their new UCF beat writer, talked with Mahajer about the move and everything, and he asked Mahajer about the black and gold comment. If you know what we're talking about, that Terry Mahajer back in when UCF got these new uniforms and it became clear that anthracite, which is the color I'm wearing, and pewter would no longer be a part of it, the reason Mahajer gave was that we're going to be the only black and gold team in the Big 12, and we have to lean into that. And the next team the Big 12 added was Colorado, who is like not only also black and gold, but like the exact shade of gold that UCF has used for years. I know they just changed it, so it's not the same anymore, but like for me, like the whole 2016 to 2021 uniform set was like, I swear it has to be the exact same color. It's so similar. So way to go. Mahajer said, Mahajer's reply was, I did not know they would do that.
Yeah, it's funny that they that's the case now, and that Murschel asked about it, because like my initial reaction was like, oh wow, like Colorado's in the Big 12. It's like, hey, Terry said that they'd only be the only black and gold team. Can we bring back pewter now?
I tweeted at him. I'm like, please give us back pewter. I love the new set. I think it's all great. I just would also like pewter. I see no reason. Yeah. Like, what do you say?
It would be a good look if they had like this set. If they had a pewter version of what they have now. It's great.
This set would look good in pewter, like really good. I would love to see them do something like that. What about like a pewter uniform, but like kind of on the night mode template with like because you know the night mode numbers, they're gold, but they're like that sort of, I don't know what the right word is, maybe like reflective quality, like light really bounces off that gold. What if they did that with like, well, they couldn't do it because the numbers won't be pewter. I'm kind of making a New Jersey in my head now as I think about this. You know what they could do? I'm not going to invent jerseys on the podcast. We're fine. We're not going to go down this rabbit hole. I just got an idea though.
I kind of want to hear it though.
Okay. Well, no, because I get annoyed when on Twitter, everyone is like, I've come up with my own UCF uniforms, because it's always like, that's great, but like they have some, so they're fine. But I just had like a vision in my head. Like, you talk about this podcast often, how you get visions. And
that sounds so bad out of context. Does sound bad.
But that's always how you like. I've listened back on our podcast and you phrase stuff that way. Like I'll be like, I predict that John Rice Plumlee is going to throw for 15 touchdowns, and you'll be like, I've had a vision that John Rice Plumlee is going to go throw for 15 touchdowns. It's just, my vision was a black jersey with pewter numbers. And then the sleeve design was that chainmail pattern we've seen on the soccer jerseys, that like interlocking gray and like that on the sleeves. I don't know. That just popped in my head. That'd look cool.
Yeah, it would.
There you go. I've now joined the crowd of people who are just like, I'm inventing a UCF uniform.
Because now all I'm picturing is like Oakland Raiders uniforms with like a pattern on the sleeve.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
But then
and carry it all the way through. I was thinking like a pewter helmet and pewter pants with this too. So yeah, the Oakland Raiders, but with chainmail is what I've invented. See, this is why inventing uniforms is fun, because you're like, I had an idea, and you list it out, and someone's like, the Oakland Raiders is what you just described. So there we go. Do we have a question? So I feel like I've derailed the podcast. Okay.
Yeah, we always derail the podcast. The question today: would you rather win versus Baylor and lose at Oklahoma, or lose versus Baylor and win at Oklahoma?
I want you to go first because
you want me to go first.
So. I made you go first last week, so I'll go first.
Okay.
I don't know. This is tough. This is actually like a thinker, because on the flip side, UCF winning, maybe there might be people listening who are screaming at us right now, like, pick Oklahoma. Are you kidding me? But like, I'm just thinking of like when UCF runs out on the field for their first ever home game against a Big 12 team, and the place is sold out and it's rocking and the fans are going crazy, and UCF's in their awesome uniforms, and it's just, the hype is unbelievable. And that ending with a loss just feels so crushing to me. When on the flip side, I think as of now, most people, both UCF fan base and nationally, expect UCF to lose to Oklahoma. So if they lost to Oklahoma, what was supposed to happen happened. But on the flip side, beating Oklahoma would be like a win we talk about forever on the road. And it would give so much cred for the new Big 12 and everything. So I have to think about this a little more. What do you think? Which way are you going?
So yeah, I was going to say kind of along the same lines as you, is like there's a very selfish way for me to answer this question because I don't like seeing losses in person, and I will not be at the Oklahoma game, and I will be at the Baylor game. So it's like I don't want to be at the game when they lose in this scenario. But if you're like asking me, like if I could press a button to make this happen right now, I'd probably press the button that says they win at Oklahoma. Okay. The only thing that made me kind of waver on that is when you said everyone already expects them to lose to Oklahoma anyway.
Yeah.
So that's made me kind of pause for a second, but I still feel like, yeah, Oklahoma, I looked this up, is 53-10 at home in the last 10 years. They don't lose at home a lot. They did last year because they were bad last year.
I'd love to know who the teams are that make up that 10. I think Kansas State might have beat them at home.
Kansas State and Baylor both beat them last year. Okay. I wish I could tell you all of them.
That's a hell of a stat.
Looked at records.
It's funny because I think I want them to beat Baylor and lose to Oklahoma. I think that's so stupid because the more I think about it, this is dumb. I shouldn't be picking this, but you know what? I want them to win both games. That's what I want. But because the other thing I'm thinking
that's the question.
The other thing I'm thinking about is like UCF's coming into the Big 12 with this like reputation of the bounce house and like, oh, it's this crazy environment and other fan base like can't wait to see it. And the idea of them losing the first ever time a Big 12 team comes to the bounce house, like I hate that. I think I'd rather just have them win that game. And then we know they're going to lose to Oklahoma. They just lose to Oklahoma.
That thought crossed my mind too, but then I was like, okay, yeah, that would be like they get clowned for maybe a week or two, but then like, what is it? 3 weeks later, they'd be playing at Oklahoma in front of however many thousand people, 100,000? They have 100,000.
I think it's 90, might be 80 or 90.
90,000?
80.
A lot of people.
80. Yeah.
They would go there and beat them and beat Dylan Gabriel and just beat Oklahoma on the road as Oklahoma's leaving. The only time they'll play Oklahoma.
I actually hate this question, is what I'm realizing. I don't like this. I hate it.
Well,
I don't want to think about that. I don't want to have to think about UCF losing a game because I'm insane. They should just go undefeated. They won't.
They should try. They should try doing that.
They should try doing it. I always laugh because I was at they had fall camp started today, obviously, and they had the press this morning. And it's always like when, and it's what you have to say and it's what you're supposed to say because you believe it. But like when players, it's for the first time, literally, I can't remember the last time I felt this way about UCF is RJ Harvey goes up there, Jason Johnson, and they're like, what are your goals for the season? They're both like, get to Dallas, win the conference championship. And in my head, I was like, okay. And it's so funny because I'm like, oh, I've never thought that with UCF before. Because like for years, UCF says we want to win the conference. I'm like, oh yeah, like that's the goal. And this was the first year I was like, that's probably not attainable for you. Like it was just kind of a weird, like what?
You take the mic next and you're like, that's not attainable for you. But like, do you have a question?
What a horrible thing would that be to do? You ask a player their goals, then you take the mic and go, I don't agree. I don't think you can. Actually, that might be the best thing you can do for a player. Like that might light a fire under them. If all the media just took turns telling you, see if we don't believe in you and pass the mic to the next. Gus would probably love that. He'd be in the back.
That's why Georgia wins national championships because no one believes in them. Remember?
Who was the Georgia player after they won the national championships past year who was like everyone thought we'd be 7-5?
I don't remember which one it was.
Not a soul on this earth thought that.
The same thing happened with the Chiefs when they won the Super Bowl. They're like, nobody believed in us. There was a little bit more like maybe the Chiefs have fallen off, but still, there wasn't like no one thought the Chiefs.
You're seeing that because I started that quarterback documentary series on Netflix, and I was explaining to Bailey. We talked before on the podcast. I don't watch a ton of NFL. Like I don't ignore it. It's just not something I like actively keep up with, like I do college football. And the documentary's been really fun for me because I actually don't know who wins any of these games. So it's like all dramatic, like some week 2 game with the Chiefs. I figure who they're playing, and I have no idea what's going to happen, and it's awesome. But they're even doing that. Like I obviously know the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and like. In the first episode, it's Pat Mahomes, and he's just like, no, it's like everyone thinks the Chiefs are done. Everyone's always thought that this whole team was just Tyreek Hill. And I'm like, no one thought that. Like, I'm like, you're considered like one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. I don't think anyone thinks they're going to suck as long as they have you. But listen, this is the thing, though, like with athletes, and it's 100% true, is that if you don't feel doubted, it's harder to play to your potential. I mean, that it's like anger and doubt is what feels that, like feeling like sitting there and thinking, I know I'm the best. That's not a motivator. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. And that quarterback documentary has been fun. I've only watched 2 episodes. I really need to finish it, but I heard that today that apparently Joe Burrow is going to be on it next year or next season.
That's right.
So I'm even more interested now.
Should be good. We will, Joe Burrow, we wish him a speedy recovery. After I said last week that why would I worry about Joe Burrow getting hurt? And then he immediately got hurt. So
I can't believe, I think because it's like a calf strain, it's supposed to be like a few weeks, whatever.
He's going to be fine.
He's going to be fine. We can laugh about it. But like, if it would have been worse than that, like it would have been an all-time, like,
if it would have been worse,
bad.
what? Do we really think I cosmically injured Joe Burrow? Like,
no, it just would have, I don't know. You can't say it would have been funny. It just would have been insane, like an insane break for this podcast to be like, fine. All right. 4 days after we recorded this.
We say stuff that ages horribly every podcast.
Oh, of course we do. But that
it would have been white noise, honestly.
Have we ever said anything that's aged that? Well, yeah, we have. Actually, I think you have.
Me, maybe. Yeah.
That's exactly what came to mind. I was like, has anything aged that poorly that quickly? But it was the Navy comment last
I actually year, so. I listened back to that podcast over the summer, like maybe a couple months ago, and I'm just such an ass the whole time. Like, you're trying to preview the game and I'm just interrupting him, like, just stop. Like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we talking about this game? Like, what's the point? And I don't know what possessed me. I think that 2017 arrogance came back real quick when UCF won 3 games in a row, which is not great, but
yeah.
It's going to come back again this year. They're going to beat Kent State, Boise, and Villanova, and I'm just going to be like, they're going to the playoff. I can't see any other outcome, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, well, speaking of arrogance, Colorado's back in the Big 12.
Sure are. This is interesting for a lot of reasons. Obviously, it's kind of funny because there's been this, as you probably know if you're listening to this podcast, there has been a long-running, like, basically social media war between Pac-12 fans and Big 12 fans going back to last summer when USC and UCLA left because the Big 12 immediately went, Yormark was like, we are going to poach you. And the Pac-12 was like, no one would ever leave. And it was sort of this whole who's right, and it seemed like from all the reporting out there that probably since like May, it was becoming clear that if someone was going to leave, it was going to be Colorado. Now, the big surprise to me is that they left before even seeing a TV deal, because the Pac-12 has been for literally a year now saying over and over again, we're a few weeks away from showing our TV deal, and they just never do. And Colorado just left. Everyone thought that the teams would wait and get the deal, and then everything would go crazy. But listen, Colorado's not some big, they're honestly probably one of the 3 worst Power 5 programs of this century, but this is a time of rampant instability in college football. You're helping destabilize a league that's probably your most direct rival as far as revenue and as far as stature. You're shoring up your own league with another member. They have that. Yormark looks smarter every day. It wasn't just beating the Pac-12 to a TV deal. It wasn't just like all the revenue stuff that he's come up with to generate more revenue, generate more hype. Getting that pro rata clause in the contract, which is what allowed Colorado to join as a full share member, the deal automatically ramps up to give them exactly as much as everyone else getting. That was prophetic because ESPN is out of money, and ESPN is probably smacking their heads against the table that Yormark can add 30 more Power 5 teams if he wants, and they're all going to get pro rata. So it's good times for the Big 12. It's nice that UCF is in a league that is kind of rising up in college football, especially since 2 years ago, this was a league that people probably thought was going to fall apart completely.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I think, about Colorado, as you mentioned, like they have been one of the worst programs for a while now, but because this offseason they hired Deion Sanders, all of a sudden they're being looked at as like, whoa, they got Colorado, like this is a big like football ad. It's like, we'll see.
Which hopefully, when Deion Sanders and Colorado go 4-8 this year, maybe that wears off a little bit. But listen, I mean, the Pac-12's now lost a quarter of their membership in the last year. And we all know, like, let's be totally clear. It's not like the Big 12 is not staying at 13 teams. The Big 12, Colorado joins in 24. The Big 12 intends to have 14 members for 2024 or more. And we all know that we all know Yormark also desires Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. And we're probably going to get some news on that very soon, because right before we get on the pod, and this is why I almost don't even want to spend too much time like theorizing what comes next, because I feel like we're probably going to know within a couple of days, because the Athletic reported that the Pac-12 is going to present their media rights deal within the next 48 hours to their members. And that will set things immediately. They will get this deal. Either they're going to leave or more teams are going to leave, or they're just going to, stay put if they like the deal or if it's enough. I will say that it sounds like everything that's been reported out there is, I don't think they're getting all 3. It sounds like it's really only Arizona that's been overly receptive. The Athletic and Sports Illustrated and a few others reported that, or Yahoo Sports, I forgot that's where Dellinger is now, have reported that they've talked back and forth for months, and talks kind of stalled over the summer. But from what it sounds like, both Arizona State and Utah have never really engaged meaningfully on that and really don't want to come. So they're probably not coming. But you get Arizona, who is also like one of the worst Power 5 teams of the last 20 years. But either way, the Pac-12 is a mess. They're going to have to go expand with Group of Fives. The Big 12 really solidifies itself as a super strong league, a super stable league with 14 teams. And I don't mean to just keep rambling on, but it's so funny because when you look at the Big 12, what's so funny is that conference's strength comes from the fact that it's the only conference with teams that the Big 10 and SEC will never want. And it's this weird thing where, like, not having any blue bloods is what's protecting them, because every conference that's ever fallen apart, it falls apart because, not all the teams are on an even playing field. Oregon does not have the same priorities as Oregon State. We've talked about before, most of the Big 12 all have identical floors and identical ceilings, and it's just turning into this really sturdy league.
Yeah, which is why, like, when you bring the ACC into it, it's like, what happens there? Because there's not a lot that can happen, I don't think, until you get to the part where it's like, maybe things are going to just force things to happen and then see what the consequences are with the whole, the grant of rights and all that.
Grant of rights. So where the ACC is at right now is that their TV contract, because literally like 10 years ago now, when realignment was bad in like from 2009 to 2013, you all remember that. So when all the last crazy round of stuff happened, got UCF into the AAC. The ACC saw everything that was happening and was like, we can't let this happen. So we should sign a TV deal that is literally almost 2 decades long. And we should lock in all our members so that they legally cannot leave while this TV deal is active. And all the teams were like, that sounds good, because Maryland just left and we're freaking out about it. And it's insane. So they literally, I think 2035 or 2036 is the first year that any teams can leave, even though Florida State and Clemson and all those teams want out right now. The latest stuff, FSU 247's website, which is a reputable website. I know 247, it sort of goes up team to team, but that's a very reputable one. And they reported that FSU believes that they have a way to challenge the grant of rights and may possibly try to look to leave. Now, I'll believe it when I see it. The other ACC update is ESPN reported that they are looking at expanding, even though it wouldn't monetarily make sense. They just feel like they need to, literally their commissioner went on the record and said they feel like they need to find a way to counter the Big 12. And it reported the teams that they've looked at are Oregon, Washington, SMU, and West Virginia, interestingly. But it sounds like from West Virginia folks that that's not something West Virginia would entertain. But stuff's crazy again. We're just right back in the middle of realignment being absolutely insane. Like, we really could do for some real football games right now.
Yeah, and we have a season that's, as we're recording this is what did I tweet on Saturday? It was like Monday would be the last day that we're in a month that doesn't have football until March.
A very convoluted but accurate statement.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
exciting
So
times.
as you're listening to this, we are in a month that has football, and that will be true until March.
It's exciting.
It's great.
It's very exciting because I'm ready for it, man.
Yeah, fall camp being back, you just start to get that like feeling where it's like, okay, now we've made it through like the long summer, and now we're actually getting there, even though we still have a whole 31 days until we.
I'm going to be honest, this
off
offseason has gone by faster than most of it feels like. I don't know if it's because we had all the Big 12 move in the middle of it and everything, but listen, it hasn't been short, but when I look back, it doesn't feel as long as some off seasons have.
I agree, but then I think back to like the spring game, like this and just spring ball, and that feels like it was so long ago.
See, I was about to say spring ball doesn't feel that long ago to me.
Oh, no, it does to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, it was long ago, so like you are factually correct, but I don't know.
It was long ago, relatively, depending on who you ask.
It was very nice for fall camp to just be like, it's always when fall camp starts. Like, you're just like, oh, like, okay, like this is actually going to happen. Like, we're going to have
there's a press conference every Monday, and it's like you get the content up on social media from UCF, and you're like, okay, there's like actual football going on outside the bounce house, and pretty soon it'll be inside the bounce house. So you really get that feeling where it's like, we're there. We're there.
I can't wait.
Congrats,
this is
everyone.
So much fun.
Football is back. And then we'll say it again next week, and the next week, and then eventually it'll be actually true. But football is kind of back.
We're saying 5 weeks out. Congrats, everyone. Football is back.
It's kickoff's 4 weeks from Thursday. So
we are really close finally.
And
I'm very
because
ready.
UCF plays on August 31st, it's exactly a month away right now.
Kent State's a Thursday night, not Friday, right?
Yes.
Thursday? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Even sooner. Can't wait. And we get week 0 before that. Yeah. All kinds of fun coming. So much fun.
Football's back. But our preseason awards we will get into now. And I think we do this. We've done this every year.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure.
We have.
And every year I'm always like, I don't really know who to pick. Except I think that's the first year we might have made a rule where you couldn't pick Dylan Gabriel. But it turns out if you would have picked him, you would have been wrong. But like we'll start with offensive MVP. And it's always hard. It's like, do you want to pick the quarterback? Just because like if they do well, the quarterback's going to have good numbers.
Sure.
But I don't know. Do you want me to go first here since you went first with the 5-star review?
Question? Yeah, why don't you take us away?
All right. I went with RJ Harvey.
Interesting. Go on.
It is interesting because the emergence or expected emergence of DeMarcus Bowman could make this complicated. But I think even if he does emerge and kind of is as good as everyone says he is, RJ will still get his carries. And I know Gus, we talked about this last week, Gus doesn't really do running back by committee as much, but
he's probably going to have to this year. Like, his hands
like
probably
last year.
Oh, wait. Also, Gus isn't calling the plays. So Gus, you know,
true.
it's probably going to change a little bit. But yeah.
But they had Bowser and Harvey last year, and where I know like there wasn't like a 50-50 split or anything, but RJ obviously still got his carries, and he averaged almost 7 yards a carry and about 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. The Memphis game in particular, he kind of took over and ran for like well over, it was over 150 yards.
Yeah, he had a couple big runs in that game too.
He just has that ability, and I know with Bowman, and hopefully it's one of those things that when UCF's run game is going, it can help John Rice Plumlee. And from everything they're saying, John Rice Plumlee is night and day. Gus's new like thing to shoehorn in any
Night
answer.
and day.
But I think the O-line looks like it could be in a good spot with some of the pieces they have there. So I don't know. I think there's a path there for RJ Harvey to end up being the MVP of this offense. But that's what is kind of weighing in the back of my mind, is like it could just be where Bowman gets hot and he ends up being like the lead back, and Harvey still gets his carries but doesn't do enough to have the volume. But I went with the safe pick because he's a redshirt senior?
Yep.
And
I think so.
Feels like he's entering this year as RB1, and I don't really see him doing anything to lose that. It's just a matter of whether or not Bowman does enough to surpass him, because I don't see him like falling off or anything.
RJ Harvey's a really good running back. So I wouldn't think so. But it is funny when you look at like we always talk about this every offseason, it's always like there's stuff that we just don't see coming, because that's the sport. And then the season starts and you're a month in, you're like, I can't believe. And like I've been trying to think about, I almost thought it'd be fun, but we don't have time because the season's about to start, but like to even do an episode, maybe next summer we'll do it, of like what are the things that we're not like guessing at what the surprise things we didn't see coming could be. And I was thinking about some, like what they could be for this season. And one I came up with was like, I could see a reality where like 5 games into the season, like Bowman is the clear number 1 running back and is getting like most of the carries, and we just didn't see that coming because of how good Harvey is. Like I don't think that's going to happen, but like as far as thinking of like what's some surprise that we're like, I could see like Bowman's just that dominant. I don't think that's going to happen because Harvey's incredible. But yeah, I did not pick RJ Harvey for this isn't really a category where there's like some clear choice, so I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to have my usual like, you're wrong and I'm amazing. But I picked a player that I have always been a really, really big fan of and supported at his entire time at UCF. Really, just loyally. I've never doubted him, and that is John Rice Plumlee. Very excited. Do you think, is John Rice Plumlee's full name Jonathan Rice Plumlee, or is it just John Rice Plumlee?
I think it's just John Rice Plumlee.
That's cool. Anyway, but yeah, so as you guys know, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, huge Plumlee fan. Always believe that he's the right choice for this program.
Gus today in his press conference twice called him JR.
JR, 2 different times. Yeah. I don't know. The P was just too much.
The legendary Jim Ross. I mean, you don't know who that is, but
sure don't. Hockey player?
No.
Baseball.
No, he's a professional wrestling announcer. Yeah.
Let's go. I would never have guessed wrestling, but
huge Oklahoma Sooners guy.
Cool.
Alma mater. Anyway, go ahead with JR.
Yeah, so my thing with JR is, but honestly, jokes aside, obviously I spent all of last season explaining why he should not have been starting, and I still believe he should not have been starting. But guess what? No other options this year. So we are all in on the John Rice Plumlee train because we have literally no choice. This season, and it's why I think RJ Harvey is maybe the best player on offense. But as far as MVP, I feel like whether this season is a success or a failure is going to entirely depend on his progress and his health. John Rice Plumlee's. I think that we've heard a lot of hype about how he's gotten a lot better this offseason. We're just not going to know what's true and what's not true of that until the season starts. And the reason I'm skeptical is I'm not just trying to go all in on, I hate him or whatever, because that's not true at all. It's just that as a coach, what else are you supposed to say at this point when you're asked about your quarterback? You're not going to say, yeah, he sucks. You're not going to say he hasn't gotten better. You're going to say he's improved. I think he probably has. I think that working with a legitimate quarterbacks coach in Hinshaw will probably help him. I think just being a year older will probably help him. And hopefully they're all about vertical passing. Maybe they can make it work. His health is another factor, his decision-making, all of that, and how it impacts his ability to stay healthy through a season. That's still a big question mark. But to me, he's my offensive MVP pick because if the season works out, it will be on his shoulders. It just will. And last season we'd have the argument a lot of, is John Rice Plumlee bad or is the O-line bad? It sounds like the O-line might be legitimately good this year. We've been talking about that throughout the entire offseason. At the presser this morning, Gus confirmed that both Grable and Medley are full goes. They're fully healthy. And then he said, this was a comment that surprised me. He said that as all of his time with Herb Hand, he doesn't think they've ever had a better group. And they were together at Auburn, I believe. And he said that there are 9 or 10 guys on the O-line who they would feel comfortable putting out there. So, You combine JR, presumably being better and having a better coach at that position, having a better play caller potentially at that position, combined with a really sturdy O-line. I see a path there to him being very good as long as he can stay healthy. I honestly legitimately do. We'll see.
Yeah.
He's going to throw 3 picks against Kent State, and I'm going to be like, never mind, but you never know.
We talked about this a couple weeks ago, I think, and it was like, I see him, like, I guess I might have said I have a vision. Like, that he could just go out there and just be awesome this year. And I almost picked him for my offensive MVP because of what you're saying, and I think it would have been like, I don't know, I kind of want to just be different. But I think not in my reality, but in my version of this, maybe the season goes to the point where it's like they're 6-6 or 5-7, 7-5. He played like okay in a lot of games, okay, kind of like last year, where like, I mean, he had like some really good games, some really bad games, had modest numbers, and it felt like at the end of the year, no, RJ didn't have like 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, but like you looked at the offense and you're like, okay, who was the guy? And I think last year might have been RJ.
And that's a good point, and that's maybe unfair on my part because he was I think it's fair to say he was their best player on offense last year. I think that's fair to say, and he's coming back, and I'm saying I'm picking someone else who was also here last year and was not as good, but
it's, when you pick a quarterback, it's like, yeah. I mean,
but it's not just picking a quarterback. It's the way John Rice Plumlee plays. And maybe this will be different with Hinshaw. I don't know. Because I am trying to keep in mind it's a different play call. The offense might look more different than we're anticipating. But John Rice Plumlee's skill set, we talked about this, that was the difference between him and Mikey last year, is Mikey was more distributing and getting different playmakers involved. John Rice Plumlee, when he's in, it's the JRP show. It's all through him because he can do it all. He can run, he can throw, all of that. And the one thing I'm still curious about for this season is I don't know if the whole consistency thing is fixable. It was just so dramatic. Like, and I've talked about before, if Hinshaw, I'm not talking about like stop him from ever having a bad game, but just kind of lower the wavelengths in both directions, where instead of shooting up and shooting down, he can just be more stable in the middle on his performance. That would be great. But I don't know, maybe it's just wishful thinking, but I feel like given the O-line, given the new coaching, given he's another year into being at UCF, he should be better. And if he's better, he's probably gonna be the main guy on offense.
Even if the highs aren't as high as they were last year, like I will take that if the lows aren't as low.
100%.
If the variance isn't as crazy as it was last year, I'm happy. So
yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I will sacrifice 7 touchdowns against Villanova if it means no touchdowns against Baylor. You know
what? I just had another dumb thought where it's like football's really close. Like I don't know why, but I just had a thing where it's like we're close to finding this out. Like we are to actually being live and in person, watching John Rice Plumlee and the rest of UCF play a football game.
But it is, when you think about, we've been talking about what will John Rice Plumlee look like in year 1 in the Big 12 since January. I mean, that's a long time to be talking about this with very little new information along the way. So you're right. I mean, literally starting in 4.5 weeks, we're going to be actually getting information here. And that's not really though, because it's Kent State, but like we will be getting we'll have more information than we do right now. I'm going to challenge the fan base and us right now to not come out of the Kent State game and really have any opinions on anything. I think we should do that.
I don't think we really, I mean, we shouldn't anyway. I don't think we will. And I think the only thing we might get a bit of a look at or a bit of opinion from is like what the offense looks like in terms of just like.
Sure. As far like from a play calling perspective, from a personnel perspective. Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be informational from that, but I don't want us to come out and be like, yeah, it turns out John Rice Plumlee is really good, or wow, yeah, DeMarcus Bowman had more carries than RJ. So he like, it just like, we're just not going to know much out of that game. And I feel like we fall into that trap every year. And it's not even just because Kent State's a bad opponent. There's just not a lot you can learn from game 1. Teams evolve over a season. You need a sample size of 3 or 4 before you can really start making declarative statements on what kind of season you're in for. You do.
Well, I wish you I know you do. You were right. I just wish you hadn't said that because I was just about to be like, well, on the flip side, we can take everything out of the Boise State game.
But we can't. But we honestly can't. Yeah, they could lose to Boise State and then go like 6-3 in the Big 12. That absolutely could happen. Boise State's a very good team. And also I feel like sometimes the sample size is so small in college football, we forget that like we define what a team is based on the end result and we forget all the little things along the way. Like I think a lot about the fact that UCF was like a bad holding call that took away a Javon Baker touchdown away from beating Louisville. And like if that a hold nowhere near the play. And if that hold doesn't happen, he scores there and UCF wins that game. Like we're totally talking about like how UCF does against P5 competition differently. We're talking about how that season went differently. And it's like, it was just a holding call that didn't affect the play. And it's like, I almost feel like sometimes we just focus too much on what did happen and we define everything through that. I'm trying to be better about not doing that as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean,
it's very
all
philosophical.
You do is like, look at the example. And I know it's not the perfect example because Tulane ended up going on to win a New Year's Six game last year, but like Kansas State, who won the Big 12, lost to Tulane early in the season. And they went on to win the Big 12 and play in a New Year's Six game against Alabama.
Tulane beat the Big 12 champion, the Pac-12 runner-up, and also lost to Southern Miss last year. Doesn't make sense. Like, it's just week to week stuff happens, you know?
College football, none of this stuff makes sense. So,
and yet we love every second of the nonsensical football.
So you're going first here for defensive MVP.
Sure am. Defensive MVP, I went with John Walker. No, I went with Jason Johnson for defensive MVP. Keeping it simple. Keeping it simple. I'm not overthinking it. I think that...
See, this is why I'm overthinking everything, because I should have taken him.
No, there's no one you should have taken. No, we have no idea.
And it just depends on how you look at it, I guess. And probably, like, you're going to look at the linebacker as, like, he's in the middle of the defense. If he's going well and he's, coming up with tackles, he's playing well, probably a pretty good sign. Do you want to talk about him first, or should I just give mine and then we'll talk about both?
Why don't you give yours and I'll talk about both?
I went with Ricky Barber.
See, that's not going to hit. That's not going to hit.
Yeah, it's not, because he plays inside. He plays an inside defensive lineman.
Like he might be. So. That's just not going to hit. Like he can be doing an amazing job, and fans really aren't going to be hearing his name much. Like it's just that one. Yeah, that's just
that's why I said I should have gone with Jason Johnson. That's why I said that, because it's like that's the pick that's like makes sense. But I think I just wanted to talk about Ricky Barber.
Which we could judge this in different ways. If Ricky Barber goes on and is like drafted in the third round or the second round or something, then you can come back and say, I have a case here. But yeah, no, like I said, that's nothing about like how Ricky Barber will be this year. That's just a position that I don't think. It'd be like picking like a tight end to win the Heisman. Like there's just not really a way for that to happen.
I guess it just doesn't happen as much in college football. Because my immediate thought was, and this is a wild thought to pull out of nowhere, but it was like Aaron Donald wins Defensive Player of the Year all the time in the NFL, and he doesn't play linebacker or
but
he's not an outside edge rusher, he's not a cornerback, but it is.
He's Aaron Donald, and but yeah, no, I don't disagree. Like I think Ricky Barber might be one of, if not the most talented players on defense. And I think he could get drafted this year. I bet he will. DeCorian Patterson got mocked in the first round by some random site. And so now we're ignoring him for this question. But
we won't ignore him later.
I will, but you won't. But yeah, I picked Jason Johnson. Like my mentality for taking Jason Johnson was as simple as he had 126 tackles last year and he's back. And I think that also it sounds like he's really sort of come into himself. He's a very quiet guy, and he was named a team captain. Wait, he was named a team captain, right? I didn't make that up.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm almost certain, but it was one of those things where I said it and I was like, but he was named a team captain. It seems like he's really stepping up and becoming a bigger part of the defense. And when you have the production he had when you were as solid as he was and you're back for another year, I think that he's going to be, and you combine that with now being somewhat of a team leader, apparently, I think he's going to have a big year.
He was, yes. I just looked at it.
I shouldn't have done
it. I was looking at Ricky and I was just thinking like the path here for him to be considered is like his sack numbers will have to go up, his pressure, like he's just going to have to like wreck some games. And it is a lot of the case where like he'll eat up the middle and then create for the outside guys, and that's just what his role is, and that's very valuable. But if you're talking about, it's very rare that you're going to say who was the MVP of the defense. Oh, it was
It's just the way football works. Like he could literally be having a giant impact on every play, and fans could just straight up not be noticing most of the time. And that's not like some indictment on fans. That just went like it's like, let's be real. 99% of football fans, when you're watching a game, you're watching the ball. Like that's how it goes.
Yeah, he just won't have like the flashy numbers, and that's fine. But
do you find it interesting that our two picks for UCF's first season in the Power 5 for defensive MVP are a guy who came from Western Kentucky and a guy who came from Eastern Illinois?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that as a downside at all. I'm just saying that's really good transfer portal recruiting by UCF to find guys like this. I mean, seriously. Ricky Barber being at Western Kentucky is wild to me. Like, how did that happen?
I don't know. I really don't.
He would start at like most Power 5 schools. So I don't get it. But, what can you do? Worked out for us. So
I told you before we started this that I don't really like, and I think it's probably just the state of where we are in terms of we don't know anything. So it's like, I don't feel good about any of these 4 picks. Of course I don't, because we don't know. So breakout transfer. I looked at this list and I was like, I almost went to Marcus Bowman, and I was like, would that just take away from my offensive MVP pick? And I just started looking at all these guys, and I ended up picking DeCorian Patterson, and it's not because he led the country in interceptions last year, because as we talked about last week, like turnovers in a lot of cases can be random. Like he's not going to have 7 interceptions again this year. He's not going to leave the country again this year. If he does, great, then I'm correct in this pick. But I think he can still have those interception numbers go down and still be a lockdown, like number 1 corner. And to me, and I guess we don't even really know, because I mean, we don't know what the depth chart looks like, but it's like they went out and recruited him after spring started, right? I don't know. Spring ball wasn't over yet, but it was like during
they
spring
realized
ball,
pretty quickly into spring ball they had a secondary problem, and
it was like they went out to get him for a reason. So I think he's going to step right in and start. And yeah, I mean, I think I think part of it is me just falling for, I think it was Pro Football Network that put him as a first round pick. But I'm like, if he's going to get any little bit of hype already for being a first round NFL draft pick, somebody sees something. And I'm gonna buy the stock on it just because I feel like it.
I mean, he's a good
player.
He's not. I think he might be. He's not some diamond in the rough. Like, he was a guy who had a lot of interest when he entered the portal, and it was considered a pretty big deal that UCF got him. I know there were a lot of other schools that were interested, so I'm not going to argue with you. He's not my pick. Kind of for the same reason that I sort of threw a little bit of water on the idea of Ricky Barber is I think that, like, if he's a lockdown corner, you might just not hear about him that much. But
here's the other reason I picked him. Sorry, he was my number 1 pick on the transfer draft, so it's like I had to double down on him.
So it's funny you bring that up. I also decided that I wasn't going to pick anyone you drafted because I didn't want to like bet against myself. So I went and reached.
I did the same thing. So
I'm taking someone that neither of us drafted.
Okay.
Because he wasn't here yet, and that is Corey Gamage, UCF's new wide receiver from Marshall. I think it's partially because he was a late addition and partially because Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson take up so much bandwidth both on social media and on the field that, like, we're not talking enough about Corey Gamage. If I'm pronouncing his name right, by the way, I think I am. Corey Gamage in the last 2 years at Marshall, 869 yards in 2021, 774 in 2022, 6 touchdowns last year. He's huge too. Like, this is like a big time addition. And he had originally committed to Purdue and then did the whole weird thing where he never took a class there and then was like, actually, I want to go to UCF. And that it would not surprise me if there's a world where when we're looking back on the season, he was amazing. And we're like, how are we not talking about this guy all offseason? Kind of like Javon Baker last year, to be honest. Sort of the same thing. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Javon, but I don't know. I think he's going to be very freaking good. I think he's going to be starting. I would be pretty surprised at this point if he's not. We've talked about before. I also like that they have real depth at wide receiver now. They've got Javon, they've got Kobe Hudson, they have Corey Gamage, they have Xavier Townsend, they have Magwood and Whitmore. They have options, and that's really cool because I still remember 2021 when they had like basically 1.5 wide receivers who they could trust, and that wasn't like an ideal time.
Yeah. So here's where I went wrong. I forgot about Corey Gamage. I would have picked him if I remembered him.
I was wondering because when I said that, you just gave me this blank stare. Like, who could he possibly be talking about?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking. I was like, I know there were some people from late editions, and it's because we haven't just not we, you, and I, but like just everybody has not been talking about him a lot. So it's like he's not at the forefront of my mind. And if I would have remembered him, is he on has UCF updated its roster?
So okay, he is on the roster. He is on the roster because it was also this weird thing where he flipped from Purdue.
Okay, I just missed him then.
He flipped from, well, let me double check now, but I'm certain he was. I checked it. Yeah, I'm looking at him right now. He wears number 4. 220-6'4". That is fantastic.
Oh, there he is.
There's a nice photo of him in a night mode jersey as well. So yes, he's definitely. His bio just says Knoll. Don't know what to make of that. But not like Knoll, like a Seminole, like Null, like they forgot to fill something in. But you kind of just really helped prove my point there, because that's what I'm saying. And it's just like, since he was a late addition, I feel like a lot of fan base just kind of was like, oh, and also not just a late addition, but like never announced he came here. Like he literally just enrolled like a typical student and just like never posted on social media or any of that. So, but I think
why is he
huge?
Why is he side-eyeing the camera so uneasily in that
I
picture?
almost said something about that.
We have a video podcast.
Yeah, we have a video
so
podcast.
Show
Let's pull it up. Yeah.
I mean, if it's gonna like, oh, that's not gonna look good.
I don't know. It is.
I don't know, but there it is.
Yeah,
there it is. Right
I don't know. I don't know what the look is. I almost said something. So I'm. This is what's great about having a video media. Is for the folks on YouTube, you have to see Corey Gamage side-eyeing the camera. So that, I don't know. I have no idea what that's about.
It's good. But yeah, no, I would have picked him. That's bad. That's all.
I don't think like I said, I think DeCorian's going to be really good. And honestly, here's how you'll benefit there is if I like how this isn't really a competition, but I'm kind of treating it as one. You're right. If he's a lockdown, or I was about to repeat what I said to you and say you're right. Like you're right, and then give my take again. But I'm right in that I think that if he truly is the lockdown corner we expect him to be, we might just not hear about him a ton. And that's
what
great.
Devontae Brown did in 2021.
I didn't even notice he was on the team, and it was because he was so good. But on the flip side, if then like let's say the hype of that one website is true, if he then goes in like the first rounds, then like yeah, you've got a pretty strong case that he was the defensive MVP or our breakout transfer and maybe defensive MVP. So
yeah. Rounding out with breakout freshman. I think it's
go
your
ahead.
turn to go first.
Go ahead.
Oh, me go first. Okay.
Yes.
Randy Pittman Jr.
Okay. See, I was a little worried about that because I also picked Randy Pittman, and now I feel like we're just the John Walker haters. Because I was worried because I'm like, you and me talk about Randy Pittman a lot, and I feel like that's almost like a little bit of like groupthink because I feel like the general fan base. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I get the vibe that the general fan base would absolutely pick John Walker for this highest rated recruit in program history at a position with a very high hit rate for talented and highly rated players. Badly wanted by Ohio State, badly wanted by Florida, badly wanted by Michigan. Maybe we were dumb for not picking. Well, the point is, I think that based on what we have heard and what we have seen, it sounds like Randy Pittman might just be more ready right now to actually play this season and make an impact on the field. Whereas I think we will see John Walker, but more as a rotational piece than someone who's going to be a star from day one. Is that fair? That's
absolutely why I didn't pick John Walker. It's not because I don't think he's going to play or I don't think he's going to be good when he does play. I think there's just more of a path there for Pittman to play. I mean, they have Alec Holler, obviously, who's a team captain, outstanding blocker, I think an underrated pass catcher, but they're still going to need another tight end, I think. Well, yeah. I don't know. They might not because they didn't last year.
It's not so much that they need. He provides a skill set that Holler doesn't.
Yeah.
And that they honestly complement each other well. So I think that just from that, especially if Hinshaw is serious about how much he wants to air the ball out and things like that, I think there's a use for Pittman, like right away.
Yeah. Yeah. And he had a good spring. And I think, I don't know, this is one of those intangible things you can't measure, but it's like they're going to bring in Kylan Fox, who committed here this summer.
Yep.
He's going to want to establish himself before Kylan Fox gets on campus. I mean, they're going to be, that's why we talked about him a lot, because we talked about in the future, they're going to be in a good spot, assuming Kylan sticks, Kylan signs. They're going to have, Randy Pittman going in next year as sophomore, and then Kylan as a true freshman.
That's like,
and
man,
it's a good tight end room, and it's a young tight end room that, barring all the transfer stuff and the transfer portal, you've got for the next few years. So, yeah, I don't know. I think, and with John Walker, it's like, I think he'll play. There is a path for him to get on the field because they need him in the rotation.
Sure.
Because they have Ricky and they have Lee Hunter, I would assume would be the two starters.
I'm certain, yeah.
And then, so you're going to need John Walker, I think, to mix in.
Yeah, the depth thin's out there. So he'll mix in, but it's just, I also just think it's I'm not at all, I hope no one comes away from this with me thinking that, if 3 years from now, John Walker is considered one of the most dominant defensive players in school history and is well on his way to the NFL, I wouldn't even be surprised. I would say, good, that's what was supposed to happen. It's just that is a position where he's going to need to put on weight. He's going to need to go through a year in the program. I just don't think that he's going to be ready to, if they were in the AAC, maybe still, but he wouldn't be here if they were still in the AAC. This just isn't, it's not a position where he's going to come in day one and be able to just wreck. And if he is, awesome. That's right. Wow. Great news if he is, but I have a hard time predicting that, even if it could happen.
Yeah. Cause there's even, I was just going to say the same thing. It's there is an off chance that he does. And when he gets on the field, he flashes enough to where it's okay, by the end of the season, he is playing a very, very high percentage of the snaps because he's just been that effective. But it is a position
that would be great news.
That
would be great news. I just have a hard time, like I said, saying we're going to predict that,
Right. Absolutely. But yeah. All right. So we'll leave it there. Any bonus things you want to mention here?
No.
Cool. All right.
I don't have anything else.
Yeah.
We've if you've listened in past years, you would notice that we cut. We used to do biggest surprise and biggest disappointment, and we just never really enjoyed doing those. And they're also not awards, so we decided to leave those.
That's a good point. I particularly didn't like doing biggest disappointment, and then it's funny that you said
I enjoyed it.
Biggest surprise either. Biggest surprise. You mentioned earlier in the podcast, maybe next offseason we should do a thing where we try to predict the surprises of what's going to happen. I was like, well, we could have done that, I guess, for biggest surprise.
Yeah, but I feel like surprise isn't even the right word. It's more just every season there are things that we at the end of the season, you look back and go, in the off season, I never would have thought that was the case. And I think the one for last year is Isaiah Bowser not even sort of being the best running back, and just sort of being never would have predicted.
How about narratives that will exist in 6 months?
Okay.
Or I don't know.
It flows right off the tongue.
Truths that will exist in 6 months.
Truths that will exist in 6 months. I don't even know. We're going to be sitting back here in December doing podcasts where we're who would have thought that Timmy McClain would unseat John Rice Plumlee for the starting quarterback job?
Yeah,
Gus did get asked today if
there's
a quarterback competition. It was very clear that there is not, which is no surprise, obviously.
I was surprised that he was even asked about it.
Yeah, I mean, after last season, I understand wanting to clear the air there, but yeah, it's pretty obvious JRP's the guy.
Yeah, when you take JRP to Dallas for the Big 12 Media Days, then
I had said last year they didn't do it, and also the AAC is virtual, but for Media Day,
before that we already knew it was going to be him as QB1, but
I don't think we did.
Go ahead. We didn't do what? We
didn't know JRP was going to be QB1, did we? Going into Media Day last year? I'm talking about last year.
Going in this year. Oh, no.
Yeah, I know this year. We've known he was going to be QB1 since like December 29th.
Right, that's why I said I was surprised he was asked about it.
Yeah, no, but what I was saying was that for Media Day in 2021, I really wanted Gus or 2022, excuse me, I really wanted Gus to bring both Mikey and JRP to just like throw chaos, like just have them both talk, but he did not do that. I don't believe either of them were available.
He didn't actually bring anyone because they didn't go anywhere.
Well, that's what I was saying. Yeah, but
yeah. Oh, AAC Media Days. Did you see that from AAC Media Days? Was it the Charlotte coach?
Yeah,
that was a fun little thing. Rooting for him now. Anyway, we'll jump into the football news. Not a lot this week to get through other than just football's back, camp's back. I saw former UCF offensive lineman Josh Sitton will be inducted into the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame this year. UCF hired Bobby Bentley as an analyst, which I feel like there's like this thing with UCF right now. Well, not right now, like last few years, but like there's a name where it's like, oh yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
Like it was the same thing with Will Healy where it was like, oh, and then even with Chip Lindsey, it was like, okay, I hired Chip Lindsey. It's like, all right, he'll be gone in a year, but it's a valuable thing.
It's nice. Like I said, it's never a bad thing to
have. It was Henshaw a couple years ago.
It was, and now he's back. It's never a bad thing to have respected and experienced voices in the room. So I am all for additions like that.
I remember talking about him too. Was it because he was at USF, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about him, I think, around that game, or I don't know if it was before then. It was somebody had mentioned that there was a connection between him and Gus, and it was like, would not be surprised to see him, hired on.
Yeah, I thought he was like in the. I don't remember, so I don't want to speak on it. He was either in the race for offensive coordinator, maybe last year. Was it last year? Like I thought there were rumors at one point that they. I don't fully remember.
I just remember there was a connection there. It was like, don't be surprised if he's here.
There was smoke there of some sort.
UCF's October 21st game at Oklahoma will be Oklahoma's homecoming game.
I have a thought on this.
Okay.
Because a lot of UCF fans were like, oh wow, so typical, like we're the like cupcake homecoming game. That's not a thing anymore, right? Like
no, it's not.
Like that's been a thing for years that schools try to have their homecoming game for like cupcake opponents. It's like a 90s thing.
Was that a thing in college football in the 90s?
It did used to be a thing.
Okay.
It just hasn't been a thing for a long time. Like UCF was Alabama's homecoming opponent that year that they beat them, I believe. Like that, it did used to be a thing. You'd schedule some non-conference nobody. But that was also back in the days when you'd play like 6 conference games and stuff like that. Like I don't think that's a thing anymore. I was surprised by that.
No, it's like, I mean, UCF's homecoming game is West Virginia. It's like I don't think that they just pick a game like
UCF's homecoming game is the team picked to finish last in the Big 12. But it's also around the same time of year every year. Like it's not like you have a ton of leeway in that. USF, I was enjoying that USF fans were making fun of it until it was pointed out that USF is UConn's homecoming game this year. So that was future Big 12 member.
I didn't see that.
Potentially. Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I only ever thought of that as like I thought it was like a high school football thing where it's just like you play a bad team for your homecoming game.
It was a thing in college football at one point. I don't believe it has been basically at all in the modern era. So I was surprised that so many UCF fans thought it was some kind of slight. I think it's just that's the date in the calendar where they're doing homecoming. But don't worry, UCF's going to lose by a lot either way. Like it doesn't matter. But
at the top of this episode, I pressed the button that said they're going to win that game. So
you did, but I pressed the button that said they weren't. So the button's canceled out, and now real life is going to just play out. So
we should flip a coin. I live by the coin and die by the coin.
Okay.
Did you see that?
I did see that.
It's absurd. Last piece of news.
Well, now we can't just move on from that.
We can.
Yeah, sure we can, but we're not going to. Bailey sent me something. This is the first sign that I'm getting old. I'm 26, so I guess I'm getting up there. And it what is it? It's like kids in high school now are like making coins their personalities. Like they just walk around flipping quarters and stuff.
It's like they're Two-Face from Batman.
I feel like our version of that was planking. Do you remember planking? Like when I was in like high school, it was like people would just lie flat on desks and stuff, and it was just like this is what we're doing. I don't know. I'm losing faith. in the human race. I am a little bit, but it's fine.
It stuns me though that this is the thing that's making you lose faith in the human race. But that's
yeah.
another podcast.
That's the whole thing. It's like, what's making you lose faith in the human race? I'm like, the high school kids flipping coins in class. That's like that. That was apparently the straw for me. But yeah.
No, I thought that was funny though. I was like, I wish I was one of them. All right, last piece of news. John Rice Plumlee was named to the Maxwell Award watch list, which is awarded to, I believe, the best player in college football.
Yep.
Yeah. So
he's going to win it. Yeah, probably not. Is the Maxwell Award winner always the Heisman Award winner? I should probably go back. I feel like
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. But who cares though?
I don't know. That's what's so interesting about it.
What's so interesting about it is that no one cares. Tweet of the week. We got many. So I have been doing a new thing on Twitter this past week where I repeatedly tweet that I think UConn should be invited to the Big 12 and then get ratioed. And I just do that on repeat every day. And I'm not doing it for engagement because I don't totally get that when people say like, oh, they're tweeting a hot take for engagement. Like I'm not seeking engagement. I don't really care whether you reply to my tweet or not. Like if you agree with me, great. Like, I don't know. I never totally understand that. It's like, I get if you're like a business or something, it's like, I don't care. But anyway, I'm doing it anyway because I believe it. And I'm just going to say what my tweet was. I'm not giving myself tweet of the week. I want to clarify because I'm not deserving of that. But I tweeted, I'll say it again, specifically from UCF's perspective, the Big 12 adding UConn as the 14th team over adding more Pac-12 schools is preferable. It gives you another East Coast team. It recenters the conference as a national league versus a Midwest/West one, and it's an easy win every year. So for a little background, this has been reported by The Athletic that Brett Yormark badly wants UConn. And this is obviously only if the Pac-12 schools don't work out. If this TV deal they get, this could all be a moot point by the time you're listening to this, if the Pac-12 gets their TV deal tomorrow and the schools come. But if no Pac-12 schools come, the understanding is that Yormark is going to push very hard to add UConn. Everything we've heard is that the Big 12 presidents do not want to add UConn, but Yormark, as reported by The Athletic, probably has enough power now to kind of force it to happen because every single thing he's done since he's gotten there has just been a complete home run. So the presidents may just not be in a position to deny him of what he wants right now. So I tweeted that, and I wanted to go through some of the replies to the tweet and refute them because I was very annoyed and I felt like character limits were hurting my ability to do so. So the first one I want to do is Wild Bill, one of our favorite listeners. Well, actually, I equally love all of our listeners. I love you all. You're all our favorite listeners.
Not me.
Yeah, not Bailey. But anyway, so Wild Bill's tweet was, he replied, I have yet to hear a legitimate argument about how travel affects us negatively. For football specifically, we're chartering flights. They relax and watch a movie the whole time. I've flown with the team on their plane. The only adverse side effect was arriving in Greenville. So first off, that's cool that you've been on the team plane. Second, I just want to say that this is one thing that's
just a ricochet shot at Greenville, though.
I know Greenville catching an absolute stray. That's just UCF's thing, right? Like when Gus randomly would like accidentally like trash their barbecue scene. Like it just the UCF fan base lives for accidentally taking shots at a lesser program. Not on the field though. So I want to talk about travel being a huge deal or not being a huge deal because a lot of fans replied something along those lines of why do we care? It's just a plane flight. I feel like people don't get how significant travel is. Like it's not just a thing you do. It's not just they hop on an airplane and go. There is a lot of concern with UCF about how they're going to deal with this travel. Gus has publicly talked about that, how they're concerned about how they're going to deal with it. And it's actually been real. I've been reading a lot about it lately because The Athletic's written like 3 different features now on how USC and UCLA are just having problems with this whole Big Ten move and how they jumped into it for the money and they hadn't really thought anything out. And logistically, it's become this nightmare. And both from the perspective of USC and UCLA having to make trips all the time. And even like Penn State is like having professors do studies to figure out how they're going to like be able to do this because literally just their road trip, like for their football team, they're worried it's going to mess with them. And when I was reading about these articles, basically what it comes down to is that one time zone you can do, and it's a trip. Multiple time zone travel is really hard on the body and it's really difficult to snap out of. It screws up your sleep schedule. It screws up your ability to focus. And that's what's tough. If Yormark gets his original wish and Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah all join, they get all 4 corner schools. 5 teams in UCF's conference are going to be 2 time zones away. They're going to have to do multiple 2 time zone trips every year. That is going to mess them up. And I just feel like we're losing sight of the fact that, like, I get we want the Big 12 to be the best it can be, and it would be better for the Big 12 to get all 4 corner schools. But, like, at some point, we want UCF to be successful in this league, right? Like, is that not our main priority, not the Big 12 being as strong as possible? So that was the first one. The next one I want to talk about was Don't Falk Up. I didn't curse. It's AFAULK. He said, so you are good with lowering our payout to simply add UConn. I will say to that there is no way they would add a team that would lower the payout. I think we all understand that. Baylor's AD even said on the record, he kind of implied that certain G5 schools have been vetted to get Parada, so I don't think that's a concern. The next one, I'm going to go through this really quickly. I also got Joel Gomez. He said, Christian, I love you, man. Love you too, Joel. But this might be one of your worst takes. UConn adds a good basketball program, and that's about it. Just adding a program to have a travel partner is short-sighted. And this is kind of the attitude I'm saying, is that I feel like we're thinking too much as Big 12. I don't know if it's UCF. Like, yes, it's everything you said is true for the Big 12, but I am not a Big 12 fan. I'm a UCF fan, and it is way more preferable to not have 3 more teams on the West Coast and have 1 more team on the East Coast for UCF than to just add teams like that. It's also not like it changes the Big 12's long-term stability. It's like no one's coming for UConn. It just doesn't matter. And then the last one I wanted to bring up was by Empinati, who said, we left a conference due to easy wins. I don't know what this accomplishes. And I just want to say we did not leave a conference due to easy wins. We left the conference because it paid us $8 million and the new one's paying us $45 million. So there you go. Tweet of the week rant over.
So I mean, if we would have left for easy wins, like Navy and ECU were supposed to be, well, it's ECU last year, but
it's not like
Navy
we left the
AAC
because we were like, we want to be challenged more. It's like, no, that one has a bigger paycheck and it's going to elevate our program.
Haven't won the AAC since 2018. So
yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, I get it, guys. I understand why, but UConn would not be some attractive ad. But I just feel like when I see some of the stuff people are tweeting, it's like, you guys got to understand, like, what's good for the Big 12 as a whole is not always what's best for UCF. And I do think that adding 3 more West Coast teams is not good for UCF. There's really not an argument for it being good. And I'd hate for UCF to have moved up to the P5 to just be on a league where they're in such a geographical island and have to make so many road trips that mess them up every year that they just can't ever really get over the hump to be winning this league. And I feel like there's a chance of that being the case if they go that far west. So we will see. Who knows?
Yeah. Let me correct myself. I mean, between the Maxwell and Heisman thing, I was doing a little bit of research while you were talking and ranting. It pretty often is the Heisman winner.
Okay. I kind of figured
the most recent time it was different was 2018. Tua won Maxwell and Kyler Murray won the Heisman.
Okay.
But like since then, like Joe Burrow, Devontae Smith, Bryce Young, and Caleb Williams won it. Right before that, Baker Mayfield won it, Lamar Jackson won it, Derrick Henry, Mariota. I think looking back, so like in 2012, Manti Te'o won it. Obviously, he didn't win the Heisman that year.
Yeah.
AJ McCarron won it in 2013. So it seems like more frequently back then it was different because like McCarron didn't win, and Andrew Luck in 2011 he won the Maxwell, and I'm pretty sure that was RG3's Heisman year, right?
I think so. 2012, yeah.
2011,
so. 2011, excuse me. Yeah, I don't know.
Just an interesting bit.
My thing is, I just don't ever recall a time that I remember seeing even like an announcement of like, oh, this person won the Maxwell. So I don't know. It's cool for JRP.
It's just because they have the college football awards where they do like all of like the Blitnikoff. They do all those.
Right.
Like that's when they award that, but it's not like as big of a thing as the Heisman.
Until JRP wins
this one.
I can't wait for the season where JRP somehow wins the Maxwell, but not the Heisman. Like he's one of the best players in college. I don't know. We'll just see. Who knows? He could absolutely, if he's good, he will get Heisman votes just for the way he plays. Like it'll be like, oh, he finished like 12th in Heisman voting. If UCF's good, we'll just have to see what happens. But
and he's in the Big 12.
And he's in the Big 12.
He's a Big 12 quarterback.
We talked this before. Max Duggan last year did not even win the job out of fall camp and was in a Heisman finalist, and not even with like that statistically of an insane season. He was just the quarterback for a very good Power 5 team. He was very good. Like I'm not saying he wasn't good, but it wasn't like like Milton had statistically significantly better seasons like twice than Duggan did, but it wasn't in the Power 5, so it doesn't get talked about.
I feel like statistically lately, like there hasn't been like a giant favorite for Heisman, like the Heisman winner.
I feel like Burrow was the last one, or Devontae Smith probably.
Yeah,
like the last couple have just felt like shoulder shrugs, right? Like that sounds really offensive because like I know Bryce Young and Caleb Williams had very strong seasons, but like Caleb Williams, like I don't know, I don't know why we're ending the podcast with like a philosophical discussion of the Heisman, but like I feel like football's back, man. We're gonna be talking about the real Heisman winner in a few months when it's all already over after just 4 months. You look at you look at like the Heisman winner, and usually it's like the story of the season, right? Like 2019, the story was LSU, the story was Joe Burrow. 2020, it was Devontae Smith. Wow, we haven't seen a receiver like this in I don't know how long. 2021, it was just like the season ended, and it was like, I mean, Bryce Young had a lot of touchdowns. It was kind of the same thing last year too with Caleb Williams. It's like, yeah, he was good. I mean, I don't know. It's just feels like we've been on a little bit of a dry streak with like storied Heisman winners. Yeah. Until John Rice Plumlee takes college football by storm this year with 20 passing touchdowns.
I thought you were saying 20 rushing touchdowns. Seems, well, never mind. I'm not going to. Excuse me. We'll get out of here now before we go on down the road of Heisman history and whatever else we could talk about college football wise, because we could be here forever talking about just I mean, we talked about it on the podcast a few weeks ago. Like you and I were hanging out, and we just started listing the Heisman winners like from the last.
I got pretty far back.
08?
I think like 09 or 08. Yeah.
09? Yeah. So we could do that on the podcast, but we won't. But we will be back next week to talk more UCF football, more other random things that pop up randomly. With episode 152. But until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, and at Night Sports Now. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.